I'm S.A. Bradley, and welcome to Hellbent for Horror, a podcast devoted to all things related to horror, where I remind you that you used to love horror movies, and you secretly still do. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Hellbent for Horror. I'm your host, S.A. Bradley, and I'm really grateful to be back here. I know it's been a long time. Now, the name of this episode is My Lost Year, and I must say, it's a very apt title. Anyone who's been listening to this show for a few years probably knows where I'm going with this. If any of you are still out there, that is. For any of you that are still out there, after the incredibly long silence for the show, literally a year, I thank you for still being here. I don't think 2025 was kind to anybody, and yet I really hate to admit that 2025 kind of broke me for a while there. And I am pushing through to reach the other side. So this is going to be a short version of Hellbent for Horror, but I wanted to get this one out so that I can break the curse that's been happening to me for the last year. Over the last decade, and yes, believe it or not, Hellbent for Horror started in February of 2016. And during that time, I've tried to make this show feel like it's an active conversation between us. Like we're just hanging around at a table all night at a diner, or even more apt, at a convention, sitting there after the show's over, a bunch of us sitting in a foyer somewhere talking movies. And I've tried to have that kind of energy all the time. And because of that kind of energy that I'm trying to create, I usually refrain from talking about my real world personal stuff. My personal life, it's a separate entity usually. I mean, it's always fun to give a few anecdotes, and I've given some background about my life, especially my weird and misspent youth. I've done that on the show before. I've written a book that also has quite a few things in there, but it's usually not going deep down in any kind of confessional kind of thing. I've always felt that too much discussion about myself can very easily fall into that uncomfortable and self-serving area of the confessional, right? You're here to be entertained. This show is at its best when it's been about us, the horror community, when it's not about me. It's me trying to start a conversation. I think that's the first things that I said on show 1. I've tried my best to keep that line of demarcation between being personable and then being, self-absorbed. Normally, the idea of oversharing makes my skin crawl. But let's face it, these have been abnormal times over the last year, and I think my absence has been long enough. Many of you have been very kind in leaving me emails saying, hey, what's going on with the show? Because of that absence, I feel I need to give a few answers at least. So let's see if I can do that. Now, I was telling another friend who works in quote-unquote entertainment, what I'm doing and a little bit more. I told him about my misgivings about talking too much about the specifics in my life, especially when things are hard, right? I mean, they're hard for everybody. Who wants to hear that crap when you've got your own stuff to deal with, right? Well, my friend reminded me that everyone's been going through 2025, 2026, they've gone through this pretty tough time. And there may be others who are feeling exactly how I'm feeling or have been enduring some of what I've been going through. A healthy community acknowledges what we have in common, and that talking about some of this in a reasonably general manner might be just what someone else needs to hear so they don't feel so overwhelmed or alone. So many times, the thing that is the killer for so many of us is feeling as if you're alone and no one is feeling the same thing. So I'm going to talk about this lost year, but as usual, I'm trying to show it through the filter of, say, movies I've watched, books I've read. I'll see what I can do about throwing in a few of those because it's been a while since I've talked about movies with you guys. Speaking of books, shameless self-promotion here. I have completed the first draft of my follow-up book to Screaming for Pleasure. And there's a few short fiction stories that are out there and essays that are coming out in different anthologies. I've been busy in that form of writing. I've had a lot of friends who have saved my butt. And essentially how they save my butt, they would go, hey, I've got this thing I want you to do. Will you do it? And I couldn't say no to them. So they kept me me rolling in some ways. So what I'm essentially saying is it's not all been bad news. There's some good news, but it's been a struggle. So much so that I had to ask for extensions for some of the writing assignments because I'll sit down to write and I can feel myself shutting down like a flashlight, on a dying battery. First, when you turn it on, boom, the light is there, but just 10 seconds afterwards, it starts to diminish a little bit. Just today, one of my Facebook friends, another author, wrote publicly about how he feels like a piece of him's died, a part of him that held his interest and his hope for the future. He wrote that he felt part of his heart hardening, and in its wake, he felt a numbness. He realized that he was grieving and had been grieving for quite a while and had no idea if he could even focus on what it was that he was grieving about. And I feel that completely. I've talked about this in lectures that I've done on horror and how horror and music work in a way that is primal. You don't have to think about it. You don't think about the music the first time you hear a song. You listen to it. You feel it. And the same thing happens with horror. And sometimes the reason we do that is because the emotions that we have are so ambiguous and so weird and wrapped up around each other that it's almost impossible to come up with a way to speak about them. So I have no idea if you had been feeling any of that, but I'll ask, do you feel that way too? I have to say that I've been feeling a bit of that. And just recently, I was introduced to a term I'd never heard before called liminal stress. Liminal stress, my goodness, everything's liminal these days. So I guess this would be the question. Have you ever been in a situation where the world just seems to be throwing a lot of stuff at you and somehow you're catching it all and you're juggling it? You avert the disaster, but your anxiety and your stress levels haven't changed at all. So you're on the other side of whatever the initial danger was, but the energy that was there, that fight or flight thing, your adrenaline's still up, all that is up. You feel even more anxiety and stress, and you can't convince yourself that things are going to work out. Liminal stress happens when you're in between things, which is why they call it liminal stress. So you're not where you're used to be, and you're not where you're supposed to be. And even the American Psychological Association defines liminality as a state of transition marked by ambiguity and disorientation when old structures no longer apply and new ones have not yet formed. You know something's changing, but you're still waking up to the same responsibilities, the same uncertainties and challenges that you had before. There's no closure. There seems to be no exit. It's like you're in the emergency room of a hospital and the nurses and the EMTs tell you that you're going to be okay. But you have to wait for the doctor to speak with you to be able to release you so that you can go home. And you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting and waiting. But the doctor is still not coming through the door. And that's pretty much how 2025 was and 2026. Here we are halfway through the year. And I've got to say, I'm just getting the energy to be able to talk about where I've been. And so we'll just talk a little bit about that, and then I'll be done with it. In the year 2025, we had a major upheaval in my family. We ended up, my wife worked for the federal government. She had a microbiology lab that she ran for the USDA for 25 years. She was heralded in her field in microbiology around listeria, and she got what we call doged. And that caused a lot of chaos very, very quickly because in the early days of all of that happening, there were no guarantees that anything was going to work out. There were semi-promises made, lots of threats, and we weren't sure what was going to happen. So unfortunately, we had to leave the place that we called home for 32 years, the Bay Area, and find ourselves very quickly in a new place. So now I'm in the Pacific Northwest. I'm up in Washington State, and I'm around the Olympia area, and I'm enjoying it now. But I'm just slowly getting the equilibrium because what ended up happening is we had to move within, I think it was like a 3-month period, and it was just a rush. And it was a change of everything that we had been doing. Cancellation of a lot of things that I was in the midst of, cancellation of a lot of things my wife was in. And she was dealing with things her way, and it came down to me to try and find us a way to sell the house, fix the house, get us out and get us up to Washington State. And she worked on this side of the equation, trying to find us a place. So lots of Airbnbs, lots of false starts, a lot of stress. And during it, I just knew I had to, shut everything else off and work on it. What I didn't expect was the residual, getting through to the other side and not knowing what to do with all of the stress. And also just trying to find myself a new community. I still, during this time, went to conventions. During this time, I wrote articles for magazines and I wrote short stories and I completed a first draft of a book. So it wasn't as if there was no creativity happening, but it was very hard to focus. And I ended up finding out I was diagnosed with ADHD. Yay, hooray, the gift that just keeps on giving. So I've been working around all of that. And there were several times I tried to put a show out, and I could not get myself to the point of where we are right now. So I'm super grateful that I have been able to do that. In the time that I've been up here in the Pacific Northwest, I've been able to do book readings. I've been able to meet the horror community in Portland, Oregon. Portland's been magnificent to me. Shout out to everyone in Portland. Olympia, Washington has been wonderful to me. And I'm finding friends and I'm finding my equilibrium again. And I'm slowly but surely reaching out to people who were there for me in the strangest of ways. I've also ended up losing some places, which meant that I lost some people as well. Not only did I lose the Bay Area connections of a close connection with people on a weekly basis, if I so wish to, but I also lost people in the East Coast because the once amazing and always venerated Cinema Wasteland ended in April of 2026. We got to see the last show before that, and they pulled the plug for the October show. It was a combination of things. So the 25-year run for that show has come to an end. A few others that I've been at are starting to come to an end as well. We're reaching the changing of a guard, really. And I'm going to talk about that in the next episode. Because of that, though, there are people that I may never see again. There are people who went to Cinema Wasteland who were not, say, well off enough to be able to do a lot of traveling to different conventions. The great thing that there was to Cinema Wasteland is that it was affordable for working people. They kept the costs down. It was outside of Cleveland, Ohio. The hotel was nothing great, but the friendships were fantastic. The camaraderie over the weekends was amazing. And so losing that is kind of a big deal. I'm keeping in touch with a lot of those people by way of email, but a lot of people have been feeling the shock of that. It's just another in a series of things that have happened. Some of them not related to my podcast or anything that I've been doing on there that I won't go into. However, there's been some loss. There's been loss of people as well in this time period. So it's just been kind of a buffeting. And that's where I am right now. I am overjoyed to be able to have this conversation. I have no idea if anybody's out there, but I really had a push from, I had a therapist talk to me a little bit about this, saying, you really need to get that show out there. But I also listened to a punk rocker, Alice Bagg, one of the early LA punk scene people, a Chicana woman who was, I think, 17 when she had her band, The Bags. She's probably best known to people who are a little bit into punk rock through her concert footage in Decline of the Western Civilization that came out in 1981, I believe, with Penelope Spheris as the director. She and her band did 2 songs, and she was pretty powerful in that. Well, she's continuing on, and she's actually going to be playing tomorrow, which is not when you're going to hear this. It'll already have been passed. But Alice Bagg is going to be playing a small venue near me. And I watched an interview with her, and she was being asked, what should someone do if they really want to get out there and just do it themselves? And she said, don't wait for perfect. Don't wait for it even to make a lot of sense. Get out there and do it, because if you're waiting for perfection, if you're waiting for the moment where the chair is not going to squeak when you're sitting in front of the mic, if you're going to do all of that stuff, you may never get it done. And the thing that you're forgetting, and this is what I thought she said that was very, very impressive to me, is she said, you're going to miss meeting someone at the place that they're at. You might have something, your world might be falling apart. Your show might come off all crooked and weird and awkward, and that's okay. Someone out there is in the same position and will meet you right there, and you'll connect with them. And I'm remembering that when I first started this, if I listened to the first show, it's embarrassing to listen to because I didn't really know how to speak into a microphone. There's a million ums. I speak very fast. And I just wanted to get a show out there. And I didn't think anybody was ever going to listen. I didn't think anybody was going to hear me push air through a microphone in something that was like pay to play radio. I don't even know how to explain podcasts to people who hadn't been listening to them. And yet you folks found me, and you found me a lot. There were a lot of people who started to write me. So I have no idea. It may be that this is dead. I'm probably going to expand a little bit what the world of Hellbent for Horror is. It's still going to be about horror. I used to talk about music a little bit. I think I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. I think I'm going to talk more about what I wrote in the second book, which is how horror is the punk rock of cinema. That it is all DIY, that it doesn't matter what your voice sounds like. You don't have to be the best at anything, that the audience is pretty much the next band. You influence the audience influences you. There's no velvet rope. There's barely even a stage if there is. It is regional. It is universal and yet regional at the same time. There's always room for any awkward voice to be heard, and there's not one thing that you can say is definitively punk or definitively horror. Both of these things are a wide umbrella of experimentation. They're a wide umbrella of welcoming the outsider. And so I hope that you're still there. I look forward to continuing this. And in fact, if you're not there, that's okay. I'm going to keep going for a little bit. I'm going to do this in the way that the punk rock DIY people used to do. Who knows if anybody's going to show up on the stage? We'll find out. So I have no idea who's out there, but I can tell you that I'm still on fire to talk about this stuff. I'm still on fire to meet you in the lobby of a hotel and talk until 3 o'clock in the morning about movies. I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation. I hope you are there. Remember to stay hellbent.